Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Shit You Wish Your Building Did. This is the podcast where technology experts tell you how to make your building smarter. Today, we are speaking to Julia Lindberg from AgentHuset and John Karsberg from Workshop. What can the workplace learn from retail experience? Well, I think retail is at the forefront of creating experiences. And as companies struggle to encourage people back to the office, maybe we can learn from retail about how to create better experiences for the workplace and also build a stronger culture. So stick around for this important conversation with Julia and John. If you're serious about making your commercial building smarter, then you are in the right place. Every episode, we talk to an expert or experts in their field and discuss practical business advice on how to implement technology in buildings. So let's get on with the episode. Julia, John, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining. I know you guys are busy.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so today I wanted to talk about experience, both from the perspective of the workplace, but also retail, of course, because that's why you guys are here, right? Experts in retail. And I have this theory that with retail, it's slightly ahead of the curve, like in terms of buildings, about the experience that it offers. And I feel that, we're now with the workplace in terms of office going through this change because of the pandemic towards, like a much more hybrid experience. And I know speaking to people who have, large offices, they are struggling with that. They're struggling to get people back to the office, and they want to create an environment that is not just conducive to work, but like attractive. So long story short, what do you guys think? I mean, first of all, is that right? Like, do you feel like that retail is ahead in terms of experience?
Should I start?
Go ahead.
I think definitely retail could be. I mean, it's of course to company, but I feel that retail they have been needed to kind of adapt quicker in order to actually generate sales. I feel that many companies, even though they are a company with a lot of ideas, they have great values. They have kind of this mindset that they're, ahead of everyone else, but then you're coming into the office and it's super corporate, very kind of, sit down at your desk, and I feel that retail were there before as well, like going into store, going to a shelf, just looking at a price and the products. But I think that overall retail has started to move more towards showrooms, even though you're going to an Elgiganten or if you're going to a power store, for example, it's so important to make an impression. And I believe that that's the case for offices or for hotels as well, that you're actually coming into an experience. I would say that that's maybe the biggest part of it. I'm not sure if you guys agree, but...
No, but I think that you're onto something. And I think that retail has for a long time needed to adapt to the customer, to then the visitor to the store, to be able to compete and to be able to sell. So I think that it's much more than from a customer perspective, trying to understand and doing research on how many people actually go into an aisle, or is it actually some other visuals that will make a difference, et cetera, and follow that up to understand for a long time, quite some time. And I think then when it comes to other commercial buildings or offices or things, that it's been from an employer perspective. It's basically you sit down and there hasn't really been any push from an employee perspective either, because we've kind of accepted that this is what it is. And then COVID kind of interrupted that or disrupted that, where it was actually shown that you could work from home or from a cafe or from abroad or from anywhere else. You had your working tools, or at least for some of us, it was possible. Not for everyone, of course, because it kind of also divided and created a bigger chasm, I guess, between some parts of society and some others. But we actually then as employees realized that we could put pressure. We had a little bit more power. And from an employer perspective, it was possible. We were still productive. So then you could start playing and experimenting a bit more. And I think we're still early on, even if the pandemic, as when it was the worst, is over, hopefully, we're still in very, very early in exploring what this means. I think it's really, really interesting to think of it from then to do the parallel with retail. that I think could do a lot more also to be better when it comes to experiences.
So tell me about that. What more could retail do?
I think that even if it's a lot better at adapting to customer perspective than offices, I still think that there's a lot more that needs to be done, especially now with tech development, to also use tech, not only talk about omni-retailing from a very, very basic perspective, that you can actually order online and pick up in store, or that you can pay with a digital card, but actually create a real channel agnostic experience where we do not force people to behave in ways that they don't need to transact in this or that channel, they don't need to be inspired in this or that, but it's more from a customer perspective to really do a holistic 360 holistic 360 thinking. A lot of people are talking about it. There are lots of PowerPoints or keynotes or whatever where you put the customer in the center, and lots of trainings for store staff and for head office people. But to really, really be customer centric, passionate, obsessive, or whatever you might call it, it's not there, I would say, yet.
And then also, I think, as the society is moving forward, and especially with social media being so big as well, I think that companies overall needs to jump on trends quicker, especially in retail as well. But I guess it applies to more or less all of the businesses. I think that is something that we have started very little, but it takes time, and you need to be so quick and to actually jump on that trend for sure. But I'm totally with you there. We have a long way to go still, for sure.
So on a basic level, this kind of concept of omni-channel. So as someone who knows very little about retail, right, you're trying to create an experience there that is both online, offline, and the kind of the two meld. So maybe you go into the shop, you have that experience of talking to someone who understands the product, feeling the product, touching it, but not necessarily buying it there, going away, being online, buying it there, or maybe even just, again, interacting with people on social media. Is that sort of a fair basic representation?
Yeah, I would say that, the kind of the basics for companies today is to, make a red thread. What you see in store, what you meet in store, it should be mirrored online as well, and vice versa. So I think that's kind of the main goal for everyone. So the customer feels, familiar with the brand, feels familiar with the messaging. And then also, especially in our case and in our business, we're very much putting focus on training store staff, for example, so they actually know the product, they know the brand, so it gets familiar for the client, and also so they actually understand the product and the brand quite well. That's the foundation, I would say. But as you say as well, we have a long way to go still.
And from a data perspective, how important is that to retail and retail experience?
I would say that it's extremely important, but that does not necessarily mean that the more data you have, the better. I think also, as retail is very hands-on and has been for a long time, I think that's one of the reasons why some companies are more successful than others. It's detail, it's being hands-on, it's being fast. Big data doesn't necessarily solve all those problems. It could be more making it more complex, but being curious is the first step. Making sure, that's why I love talking about this, just being curious and trying to understand why people are, why we are so quirky as we are, and why we decide in strange ways, and how it works. But just being curious, and then being clear, smart on data collection, and really be creating structures where you can collect the right data at the right time and making sense of it, not just having large volumes of data, creating fantastic dashboards that no one really understands why you need all these 10 things, because it might be difficult to act on. Maybe 3 is better. I also think that when it comes to data, that it should be designed and followed up so you can actually make sense of it, not managed and controlled perspective, but to make it applicable to the business, to be able to take actions on it, because that's where it matters. Then, of course, it's important to tell your manager you're doing a good job with a couple of KPIs. But the most important thing is to make sure that you can actually make sense of what you're doing, take action-oriented decisions. And it doesn't take a lot of data points all the time to do that. So a bit less is more. Extremely important, but less is more.
And then the sort of the fundamental things. I mean, obviously, retail is very much driven by sales. And I know, for example, there's, let's say, square foot per sale. And that's an important metric, right, for physical stores. Anything else?
Yeah, it could be lots of things, I would say. No, but I think that it's what is important and what is possible is to use tech then, so you know where people go. And that's been possible for a long time, but then maybe it's taken shadowing or people looking and really filling out physical pieces of paper to see how many times are you touching products in that aisle, for example. But it's possible to measure. It's possible to see conversion rates physically. It's really important digitally, maybe too important digitally. But there are lots of things you can try to connect behavior and benefits and drivers with selling. Because selling is an extremely important metric, of course, because that's ultimately what people would want. But do you want selling today, or is it somewhere down the line? What do you want? What is the store there for? What is this flagship store there for? Is it to inspire? Is it to sell? To whom should I inspire? And who should I sell to? And should I send someone to our digital store instead because the assortment is bigger or whatever? I think that, I'm just making it more complex, but it's this is what I think is fun.
Because it's really not necessarily they might compete in a way, right? Like if you're just trying to force someone to buy something, they're not necessarily going to be the best experience, is it?
No, exactly. So, yeah, and I think also the tricky part there is, as you say, I think many companies, especially in stores, since sales is kind of the main focus, right? I believe that many companies is just looking for the short term, so just fixing the short term problems and not, as you say, working more or less like, okay, what is actually the brand experience here? And maybe that's also why people are figuring that out more and more, to kind of give a whole experience instead, even though if it's in store, maybe doing showrooms, etc. And I also feel that, I mean, looking at hotels and offices as well, I mean, we're moving there. And also, as we know, the most popular companies to work at is more of a kind of, not a playground, I would say, but more, it kind of, okay, it gives you an experience to actually come to work, you know.
So do you think in some sense it starts with culture and brand? Like if you haven't got that right, then you're just not going to be able to do the experience to a certain level?
I mean, in the long run, yes, I would say, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think the culture and brand will give us a lot of clues to where we are, what stores do we go to, what do I buy, but also where we work. What do they stand for, what are the values, and how is that materialized? I think there is a lot to do there, and getting back to a bit more employee power there, I think that we can also put more power than on the employer to create a holistic, like a value-driven organization that is culturally coherent in one way or another. Not all companies should have, or employees should have, slides in different colors, maybe all over the place, or bean bags to sit on, but it should be coherent, and it should work with the overall brand as it should be. It should send one message in a way.
Yeah, and I think also, I mean, especially with the kind of younger generation coming in, I feel, I guess it's my opinion to it, of course, but I feel that many people coming straight from university and or other schools, it feels like they want a workplace where they belong, or where they are valued, or where they are said. It doesn't mean, as you say, that it needs to have beanbags and a ping pong table. I think it's more that it's mirroring their values and mirroring who they want to be as a person as well. So you actually go to work and feel that you're making a difference on something that you actually cares about.
That's a great point. So in some senses, like environment is just one part of it, right? It's also the why.
Exactly.
Yeah, and not just what the office is like, of course.
No, and so it's not if you look at different kinds of flex office solutions. To me, it should then be driven by a customer perspective and a need than an employee need, more than a cost-cutting need, even if they should maybe or could maybe go hand in hand. I think that it's a very different perspective, and it might give a different outcome. So you're doing it for the right reasons.
Exactly.
So just, guys, to wrap up, and I really appreciate you taking the time today, but I mean, is there some advice that you would give, a company that is struggling with their experience in getting people back to work?
Oh, I mean, I think to begin with, I know that especially me, I come from a company before I started working here. They were very strict with us being in the office for certain hours, for example. I would say the main thing is to have kind of an open mind that people are actually doing their work, even if they're sitting at home. And so I would say that to begin with, being flexible with that gives a lot of value for the employees to begin with. But I mean, there's of course a lot of metrics to measure here.
Yeah, and what I usually say as a response to all questions is that you can ask and follow up, and you don't have to have all the answers. Then, as an employer or as an owner of a building or something, you can ask and you can follow that up, and do that every now and then with different kinds of pretty simple surveys to get people's opinions and to see what works and what doesn't work, and experiment and play. And I think that you together then with everyone that is then using the space or hotel or office or whatever, right, can then help you, and you create it together, basically.
Great. Thank you so much. It's some really interesting points.
Thanks. You.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. And if you like what you heard, don't forget to like the episode. And if you subscribe to the channel, you'll be notified when we publish new content. Thanks very much.